it just dawned on me that we're doing Caleb's route. So there's like multiple routes that you can take. Like with everybody. Anyways, whatever. Chapter 1, the queen gets her color. I was drifting in warm darkness, wrapped in silence and unable to move. Somewhere nearby, whispers blossomed, slithering through the velvet shadows. There were echoes of footsteps in some wide empty place. Where the fuck are we? I could just make out the words that floated to me. The beginnings of understanding sparking at the back of my mind. My eyes flew open and I was staring at a white ceiling, whose features were still blurred by the haze of sleep. One hand reached up, rubbing my fingertips against my eyelids. The blurriness increased for a moment before the room around me came into a focus. I let out an involuntary moan as I struggled sitting up. It was a hospital room. There was the soft hum of a medical equipment and nothing else. I was dreaming just now, wasn't I? About what? I wasn't sure. The details slipped further away the more I tried to focus on them. Within seconds, the dream was beyond recall, leaving nothing but vague, dick, girl, relax. Disquiet? Girl, I don't know. Behind. I can't read. Ugh. I rubbed my head and looked around again, blinking a few more times. My eyes are weird. I scrubbed at them with the palms of my hands and stared down at my fingers. No. Was the problem with my eyes, or was it more the problem with my head? I clenched my fist and sighed. Everything feels different. I feel different. Swallowing against the dryness in my mouth, I finally reached for the water pitcher on the table next to the bed. My hands were shaking, something I didn't notice until I poured myself a cup. For the time being, I focused on drinking without spilling everything down the front of my gown. Excuse me, guys, I'm sleepy. The water soothed my throat and washed away the gross taste in my mouth. Why does my mouth always taste like old moss in the mornings? Why do we know what old moss tastes like? That's gross. Though, was it early even morning? I had no idea. My net access was non-existent, so I couldn't tell how long I'd been out. And I was alone as well. No nurses or anyone. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and stood carefully. Though I had a feeling I shouldn't be doing it. But I wanted answers. Cor Solaris. I was fairly sure that's where I was. I vaguely remember being at the cafe with Jack the day of my attempted kidnapping. Ari and Caleb showed up because I let them. Not that I could have stopped them, rather I simply chose not to warn Jack they were coming. I wasn't even sure how I knew they were going to be arriving. I wonder what happened to Jack anyway. My memories from what happened after Ari teleported me out of the building were fuzzy at best, but I think they had been planning on letting Jack go. That was the feeling I've gotten from the woman in the alley. Essa? I think that's what Ari had called her anyway, as she was the bishop. I hadn't realized it at the time, but they'd all been in those familiar black and white uniforms, haven't they? I wonder when Ari and Caleb even had a chance to change. Excuse me? Not that it mattered. The point is that they would have taken me to Cor Solaris after that. That was the in-game headquarters after all. My room didn't have a window, so I couldn't see outside to confirm it though. That being the case, I made my way to the door with cautious steps, hoping my wobbly legs didn't give out. The door wasn't locked, and when I peeked my head out, there was no one nearby. Y'all, I got congestion. The lack of guards surprised me, but in the end, I wasn't a prisoner here, I hoped. No one noticed me peering out, so I stepped into the hall and let the door slide shut behind me. Even then, no one paid attention to my presence. I just flattened myself against the wall and watched the various staff members pass by. There was a nurse's station not that far away, but even the person there didn't seem to notice my presence. How odd. They didn't seem extraordinarily busy, but I wasn't so sure how they missed that I was standing right there. I continued to observe the room leaning against the wall as I watched. Maybe I should try to get someone's attention. I had a lot of questions, but I was hesitant to call out or make a fuss. Even if they weren't busy, it wasn't empty either. In fact, it was a lot like a normal hospital. Was I actually at the headquarters or a nearby clinic? Though I was sure in-game had clinics of its own for treating its agents. It felt like a standard medical facility, though. People were moving from room to room, handing off displays and tablets, chatting together, passing charts, and calling out to each other about test results. One man in particular stood out from the rest, the one I assumed was in charge, at least based on his demeanor. He wasn't all that tall and had blonde hair that fell on his eyes. Even from where I stood, I could see the dark circles under them. He was ordering people here and there, or talking quietly to the others who seemed to be constantly pestering him with questions. Though he didn't have a particularly commanding presence, there was an air of authority around him. Yet, even he didn't seem to take any notice of me. I really don't know how long I stood there, but at the very least, based on snippets of conversations, I was able to surmise I was at Cor Solaris in the medical ward. A swirl of conflicting emotions washed over me as I stared at the floor. After so many years of trying to avoid it, I ended up here anyway. I shut my eyes at the unsettling mixture of uncertainty and heavy inevitability, I don't know how to say that, threatened to overwhelm. What would happen now? What were the next steps? Everything had changed so fast, but the future I'd been so confident about had slipped beyond my grasp. It all felt inescapably dire and bleak. The door next to me opened, a rush of cold air washing over me. My eyes snapped open just in time to see a familiar dark-haired man disappear in my room. Caleb? He had noticed I was. A split second later, the door slid open again, and he burst back into the corridor with a startled cry, staggered backwards. Our eyes met, his brows drew together in annoyance, and... Stay where you are, run away from him. We're gonna stay where we are. We're gonna be analytical. I just froze, placed, staring at him with wide eyes. Where the hell did you come from? I've been right here the whole time. You were not there when I... He let out a soft grunt and caught my arm, pulling me back into the room, much more gently than I expected given his expression. He nudged me towards the bed as he stuck his head back out the door. The fuck does that say? Sasaki? Sasakai? Get your ass over here. I craned my neck over my shoulder to see who he was talking to. Sasakai, who turned out to be the blonde man I thought was in charge, looked up from where he was standing with two nurses at the other side of the nurse's station. His gaze went from Caleb then to me, peering around Caleb's torso. One eyebrow lifted before he handed a display to the next person to him and started over. Caleb, I believe I repeatedly asked you not to bellow at me from across the room. I'm perfectly capable of hearing you speak at a normal tone, as I mentioned numerous times. Your insistence on being as loud and disruptive as possible is going to get you thrown onto my medical ward again. And you, Noriadanis, I don't believe I cleared you to get out of this bed. Is there any particular reason why you're sitting near the door to your room? Perhaps another escape attempt? Another, hey. When he reached me, he planted a hand in the center of my back and herded me towards the bed. It's understandable if you can't recall the last one, given your febrile responses was quite high at the time, and you were clearly unaware of your surroundings. I'm pleased at least that you're more aware of the situation this time. However, that means you left your bed unintentionally, does it not? Check your PSI doc. Oh, that's not almost like an order. Does the Queen's Rook outrank Chief Medic now? Was there a memo I missed at some point? Get off your high horse and do it. I think she's mimicking Ari's space distortion, and unless I'm misremembering, you said she shouldn't be using PSI. Sasakai, sorry, my bad. Though annoyed, did fish a scanner out of his pocket. He caught my chin in his hand and placed it to my temple, and he looked at me questioningly. Are you utilizing your mimicry skills right now, Miss Adonis? Not that I'm aware of. I don't even know how to do something like that. Hasn't stopped you from doing it before? I gave him a sour look. Caleb, if you're going to antagonize my patient, you're welcome to leave. I'm not antagonizing her. I'm speaking the truth. She's mimicked Ari before, whether she intended to or not. Sasakai pulled the scanner away from my head and checked it with a frown. How unusual. It appears Caleb is right. Kale? Like, is there just spelling errors? Though your PSI waves are normalizing, there are indications you may have been unconsciously utilizing your abilities. She said she was standing in the hall when I came in her room, but I didn't notice her there. Actually, I'd been in the hall for about 10 minutes and no one noticed me. That is odd. My staff would be unlikely to fail to notice such an important patient wandering around, and certainly I noticed nothing until Caleb shot across the room like a trumpeting elephant. I'm afraid this is a problem, isn't it? The events prior to your arrival resulted in a severe case of PSI fatigue. Brain scans also revealed damage in line with a devastating power surge, likely the event that resulted in the earlier PSI burst, though we were able to repair the minor brain damage. Wait, brain damage? PSI energy is controlled and utilized purely by the power of the mind, Miss Adonis. All organs related to it are in the brain. What else would you have imagined to be damaged by overtaxation to the point of complete exhaustion? I had brain damage. Minor. It's been repaired. Nevertheless, your PSI has been in a state of flux for the last few days, and to facilitate a full recovery, it is necessary to ensure you discontinue all use of PSI for the time being. Difficult when she's doing it unconsciously, and PSI inhibitors won't work on her. Wait, how long have I been here exactly? 4 days, some of which you spent in a medically induced coma. Since we had no other way to suppress your PSI, looking at your scans, I can see tachycardia, elevated blood pressure, and cortisol levels. Your euphoric system also has yet to return to normal. All classic signs of lingering PSI fatigue, hence you are not to leave the bed again. I didn't even go that far. Another patient that prefers to argue rather than simply listen to medical advice? How unprecedented for this place. I don't know how to talk. He sighed and pocketed the scanner, checking the display in his hand again. Sorry y'all, I have allergies. I believe a mild sedative will help you alleviate some of the anxiety, likely feeling the unconscious use of the PSI. I'll have someone stay in your room to keep an eye on you. I don't think that's... I wasn't aware of your medical degree. Perhaps you would be interested in joining my division when you're fully recovered? Is he always like this? Yes, annoying, isn't it? Seems to be a required trait for joining in-game. I resent that remark. Thank you very much. I'll have you know I'm quite adorable and I'm not annoying in the slightest. You are annoying when you enter a patient's room without knocking or obtaining permission. Visiting hours are over. No, they aren't. Stop making up rules on the spot. I remember her. It was a woman from the alley and Ari was with her as well. I suppose now that the entire Queen's Guard is assembled, I shall go order your sedative. There are a few other tests I wish to run as well. The lot of you have 5 minutes and then you will leave if I have to. If I have to, Caleb, I'll throw you out personally. I can't tell if he's like intentionally calling him Kale. Wait, he gets to say that's not... The doctor was already out the door without waiting for her to finish. I hate it when he does that. I had the feeling Van wanted to chat a little, but we didn't really get the chance. As soon as the doctor left, a swarm of nurses poured in. I had all my vitals checked, was given a sedative, and was lectured by literally everyone that came in the room. There was no time for chatting amidst chaos. Eventually, I was lying on the bed, starting to doze off to the sound of the medical equipment. Caleb and I were finally alone after Van and Ari had been shooed away, and all the nurses finally cleared out. He was seated next to me, legs stretched out and arms crossed over his chest. From the expression on his face, I thought he was probably reading on the net or something. At any rate, he wasn't paying attention to me. I watched him through half-closed eyes, my vision already going fuzzy with sleep again. Caleb reached up absently to catch a lock of hair that had fallen in his eyes. He twisted the strands between his thumbs and forefinger, mouth turning downward as if he had seen something displeasing. I turned my head towards the ceiling as my eyelids grew heavier by the second. I had so much to ask. Questions. My words slightly slurred. Caleb looked at me, eyebrows raised. You'll have time to ask questions later. Don't think about complicated things right now. Just get some rest. I want to know what happens to me now. A long pause. You already know the answer to that one, Adonis. His voice was soft, strangely hesitant. I want to go home. I know that already. The odd catch in his voice made me want to look at him, but my eyes drooped shut and I let out a soft breath, unable to ward off sleep any longer. Briefly, something warm and gentle settled on my forehead, and I thought it was someone's hand, and wondered if the doctor had come back to check on me, and then I was out completely. That was it? Okay, y'all. I mean, we're just going to do short chapters with this one, but thank you for listening, and I will be back.